merci, à plus tard. j'avais demandé, je dis, quand je suis arrivé, c'est bien les parties. En effet, c'est plus confortable. Oui, il y avait quand même du monde. Bah, la dernière fois que j'ai été allé au week-end, c'était full bourré. Là, il y a peut-être encore une trace de vivre, mais tout était rempli. Mais l'ambiance, la décoration, franchement, ça super sympa. C'est une cuisine brasserie un peu supérieure, mais c'est bien. Ça va bien. Oui, mais j'ai discuté avec Joseph, comment que ce soit des nouveaux ils ont pris les bonnes instructions, donc pour que ce soit voilà. Moi c'est comme ça que je le fais. Ok, ben écoute, si t'as besoin, je pense que voilà. Ça va? Ok, ça marche. À tout à l'heure. Eh ben super. Merci. À tout à l'heure.
Good morning, everybody. We are looking forward to today's meetings. We are going to be discussing NATO's activities when it comes to deterrence and defense. As you know, Sweden is very committed to strengthening NATO. We were last week in Latvia, where we also were noting the change of command of Sweden's mechanized battalions that we are providing to the alliance. We are well into 11 months into our journey, and we're glad that that came into place as well. In addition, I expect today to be also discussions about something called FLF Finland, meaning, of course, that Sweden might then become the framework nation for FLF Finland. This is greatly helped by the strong cooperation that Sweden and Finland are having in the area of defense for many years as well. And we would be proud to be the 9th framework nation within the alliance. In addition, I also expect us to discuss NATO's support to Ukraine, particularly the role of NATO. As you might know, Sweden is also one of the largest contributors to Ukraine. We just announced our biggest support package to Ukraine a week ago, and our position is that Ukraine, if it chooses to negotiate, should be negotiating from a position of strength, and Sweden is committed to make sure that Ukraine has that ability.
What direction is the alliance going now?
Well, I think what we should be doing is focusing on deterrence and defense, and that making sure that we keep NATO strong and that we can defend every inch of the alliance territory. I think it's going to be crystal clear that the European allies have to take also larger responsibility for the security. We are moving in the right trajectory there when it comes to defense investments, but more needs to be done, obviously.
After yesterday's phone call between President Trump and President Putin, do you fear that Europeans will be sidelined in any kind of peace negotiations?
Well, I also take note that President Trump also talked with President Zelensky, and I took note of what President Zelensky said afterwards. For us, it's very natural also that we as European allies are engaged into these discussions. Last year, we provided about 60% of the military support, and I see going forward that Europeans have to take a larger responsibility, and therefore it's very natural that we're engaged into the discussions.
Minister, almost 3 years of war now. Now Ukraine will probably cede territory. Has the West failed in its support for Ukraine, especially Europe?
Well, if Ukraine should seize territory, that's up to Ukraine to decide that. And we stand behind Ukraine's territorial integrity. And we are, that said, committed to making sure now, if there becomes negotiations, if President Zelensky chooses to engage in this, that Ukraine can do this from a position of strength. And that's why we, for every year that's passed on in this war, our support has become bigger and bigger, and we're ready to do more.
Sir, would Ukraine's negotiation position has been stronger if things like NATO membership would still have been on the table?
Well, as far as I understand, the U.S. position from this administration is that this is about claiming that NATO membership should not be part of this political agreement. I don't foresee the NATO membership as such being off the table for Ukraine. Our position is well known and communicated, and we stand behind what was said at the Washington summit, of course, that Ukraine's future is in NATO when it lives up, of course, to the conditions. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm Dovilė Šakalienė, Defense Minister of Lithuania. And I think that we all understand that the moment of payment is always unpleasant and even painful. But United States were justified in criticism to Europe for not paying for our own defense after Second World War. Americans were developing their defense industry and their army. What was Europe doing? Investing in our economy. Now we see that that was not the right path, and it will be a very swift resolution. Whether we wake up and actually our defense industry and our armed forces, our capabilities develop very swiftly and very significantly, or we will be in a very difficult situation, to put it diplomatically. However, it is important to note that United States and Europe are and will be and must be allies. This world has become as small as never, and Indo-Pacific and Europe are connected very directly. China and Russia are going to coordinate their actions, and if we are not able to work together as a team for democratic world, it's going to be the darkest time since the Second World War.
After yesterday's phone call between President Trump and President Putin, do you fear that Europeans will be sidelined in any kind of peace negotiations?
It's up to us whether we will be sidelined or whether we will stand up to the expectations and to our actual capacity to fight for Ukraine, to fight for our own freedom, because in a few years we will be in a situation where Russia, with the speed that it is developing its defense industry and its army, is going to move forward. We all understand that Ukraine is just the first stage currently of imperial expansion of Russia. We in the Baltics remember very well, also through our family experiences, what does it mean when Russia is preparing for war.
Can you describe what direction this alliance is now going?
I think today we are going to have very difficult discussions, and probably the directions are two very obvious choices. Whether we decide to fall under the illusion that Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin are going to find a solution for all of us, and that would be a deadly trap. Or we will, as Europe, embrace our own economic, financial, and military capacity, and we will be the ones who will be deciding what will happen in Europe and in Ukraine with United States. Because let's not be naive. United States is not only the most significant contributor of the NATO alliance, but also the one that has been, I want to reiterate, paying for our security. And that needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. So it's a new day, new discussions. Of course, mainly we will discuss and concentrate today to NATO readiness. And we all understand what we have been saying all the time, that when we want to increase our readiness, then we have to talk about our capabilities, lethality, defense capabilities, air defense, and for that we need to increase the defense spending. This has been from our side already a long time an issue we have to address. Now it has been vocalized a bit more, and of course in The Hague we have to come to the conclusion what will be the new target, what will be the new level of defense spendings here in Europe, and it's not a surprise that Europe has to take more responsibility. So in that sense I really do hope that in this family called NATO we are on the same opinion that we have to do more, but also we have to take into account that this is a family, and in the family, as Alexander Dumas already said many years back, one for all for one, means that we are all backing ourselves if needed. So Estonia is at the moment, together with the United States, in Iraq, saving the freedoms. And of course, we have been in different missions. We have lost proportionally more soldiers than United States. And my message will be very clear that in this family, we are standing shoulder to shoulder, back to back to each other, and then we are protecting and defending ourselves. Of course, we will increase also in Estonia defense spendings. Last year, Estonia was the second highest by percentage. We will go next year by today's margins to 3.7, but we are discussing even to go above 4% or even to 5%. So we will do our share and we will continue investing to defense.
Can you describe what direction this alliance is going now?
We will see more today. So of course we will discuss internally. So this is the point of the family, and I really do hope that we will have a very frank discussion that, what NATO do we want to see. 75 years we've been able to defend the alliance, our countries, to preserve the peace, and I do believe that this is the only way how to preserve the peace in Euro-Atlantic zone.
Minister, after yesterday's phone call between President Trump and President Putin, do you fear that Europeans will be sidelined in any kind of peace negotiations?
Europe has to be part of these negotiations. It's not a question at all, because Europe has put sanctions on Russia. Europe is investing to Ukrainian defense, and Europe is rebuilding Ukraine with European Union money, with our bilateral aid, etc. So we have to be there. So there is no question about it. Otherwise, this peace will not be long-lasting. This peace will not be the peace we would like to see. And I also believe that as Ukraine wants to be a member of the European Union, so this is also one additional reason. So obviously, Europe has to be part of these negotiations.
How do you want to convince the US administration to make sure that you are part of these negotiations?
Well,
were you informed of the call yesterday of President Trump?
President Trump, I believe, makes his call when he wants. It's not about that when he makes the call. It's about the negotiations. And again, regarding negotiations, we will have also NATO-Ukraine Council later today. But we have to understand that there will be no peace without Ukraine. Ukrainians have to be the ones who are saying when we are ready to negotiate, when we are ready to take new conditions onto the table. So it cannot be so that someone will come and say, when to talk. It has to be Ukrainian nation and Ukrainian president who says when. There was one question more, and then I will leave.
I was going to say, you say that Europe, has to be at the table, has to be involved in those discussions, but do you feel that Europe is, as of now, involved in those discussions? It's following my colleague's question about President Trump's call. Do you understand what they were talking about? Was he sharing his vision on how this conflict should end, or just American vision?
Well, we have these negotiations. Yesterday we had discussions with Pete Hegseth. There will be a discussion round next week with Keith Kellogg. So we are part of these negotiations or preparations. We cannot talk about the negotiations at the moment. So we are preparing for this. And of course, Europe has to put our vision onto the table also. So because, as I said, sanctions, rebuilding Ukraine, bringing Ukraine to European Union. Also, our goal still stays valid that Ukraine has the right to be one day member of NATO. But anyway, I believe that we have some other colleagues waiting. So thank you very much.
Good morning. Yesterday we met as 50 nations in the Ukraine contact group to boost our support for Ukraine at this critical moment. We heard a clear message from the US about stepping up, and we are putting billions in new firepower into the hands of Ukrainian fighters because they are still fighting. They are the front line of freedom. And our job as defence ministers is to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position for any talks. Today we'll be continuing those discussions as NATO allies, and you'll see new announcements of support for Ukraine through NATO, and you'll see the UK playing a leading role in that support. We've seen the calls from President Trump overnight, and we all want to see a durable peace and no return to conflict and aggression. And let's not forget, Russia remains a threat well beyond Ukraine. So my message in these discussions will be that there can be no negotiation about Ukraine without Ukraine, and Ukraine's voice must be at the heart of any talks. And as I say, the Ukrainians are fighting bravely. It's our job as defence ministers here at NATO to put them in the best position to secure a lasting peace through strength. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask you, sir, just one question?
Good morning, everyone. I'm William Blair. I'm Canada's Minister of National Defence. As my colleague, Defence Secretary Neely just iterated yesterday, we met as the Ukraine Contact Group for the 26th time under the leadership of the United Kingdom. I think we had a very important and frank discussion about our unity and support for Ukraine. I also had the opportunity yesterday to meet with Minister Umarov and reiterated to him our continuing support to continue to provide Ukraine with everything it needs to put themselves in their best possible bargaining position as we go forward towards a peaceful resolution of that conflict. Canada's is resolved that we will be there for Ukraine to ensure a just and endurable peace. And I assured Minister Umarov of our continuing commitment to do that. All of the members present also reiterated their continued support of Ukraine to enable them, to give them the tools that they need, because as Secretary Neely just said, they're still fighting. And we will be there for them to provide them with the support that they require to work towards that just and sustainable peace. I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Mr. Blair, what direction is this alliance now going?
Well, I think our resolve over the past, since almost 3 years now of this conflict, the alliance has been remarkably strong and resolved to provide Ukraine with the tools that they need to defend themselves against the illegal invasion that was perpetrated upon that country. That resolve remains. But we are also watching very carefully of the ongoing discussions that have been taking place between the President and Mr. Putin. It is essential from our perspective that Ukraine must be part of that negotiation, and that we're going to continue to support them to enable them to be in the strongest possible position to achieve that just and sustainable peace.
But the alliance that Vladimir Putin wants to end the war.
Given that Donald Trump clearly doesn't seem to maybe want to bankroll European security anymore, or provide security even to the Europeans, would Canada actually have its security interests better served being the 51st American state?
Canada is a proud and sovereign country, and that is not going to happen. We will remain a nation and an important member to NATO, and in all of our alliances, including with the United States. We are resolved. We heard very clearly concern expressed by the United States yesterday about the need for every member of the NATO alliance to step up and do more. We agree. And Canada understands its responsibility. We need to do more, and we will do more.
Yes,
do you agree
not
that
good news for Ukraine, though, are they?
I'm sorry?
Yesterday's comments from Secretary Higgs, it's not good news for Ukraine.
And again, we'll let Ukraine answer for any concerns that they may have. From our perspective, it's important that they be at the table, that their concerns and what they require be adequately addressed by all of us who support them. I believe that resolve remains.
You don't think this is the beginning of the betrayal of Ukraine?
I would not characterize that. First of all, that was, as I said, the 27th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contract Group. Over 50 nations have gathered to express their continued support and resolve to continue to support Ukraine.
The biggest player is not.
No, but working towards a just and sustainable peace for Ukraine is what we have all been working for. And there may be many paths to that just and sustainable peace, but I think they need to be explored, because our support for Ukraine has been steadfast and unwavering, but at the same time, we all need to work towards a peaceful resolution of that conflict.
Do you agree that Vladimir Putin really wants to end the war, as President Trump said it yesterday?
Well, and again, I think that President Putin's invasion of that country was an illegal and unjust act, and they need an appropriate response. It's why every nation of the Ukraine Defense Contract Group and NATO have stood with and behind Ukraine to support them in the defense of their country. We will continue to support them as we work towards a peaceful resolution of that conflict. And it's very important that Ukraine's voice always be front and center in those discussions. Thank you all very much. Have a good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you all. Just a quick doorstep before we start with today's meetings. Clearly, a lot happened yesterday in the meeting, but also in the media. No doubt that will be debated today and over the coming days and weeks. But there's also a clear convergence emerging. We all want peace in Ukraine, rather sooner than later. We all want Ukraine to be in the best possible position when those talks start, to make sure that they can be concluded successfully. And as also Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the new American Secretary of Defense, it is crucial that whatever comes out of those talks, it is durable, it is enduring. No Minsk III. We cannot have that again. We cannot have Putin again trying to capture a square kilometer, a square mile of Ukraine in the future. Then, of course, we will also discuss today spending. We have to spend more, not only because the US expects that, because they expect Europe to take its and pay its fair share. But also we have to spend more because we know the threat coming from Russia and from other adversaries is increasing. And that will be debated today. And here I think there is a clear expectation from the side of the US, but also a clear commitment yesterday that this alliance is here to stay for the generations to come. And we will discuss today the defense industrial base, how to produce more. We are not producing enough. And this is a collective problem we have from the US up to and including Turkey and including the whole of the European Union, Norway, UK. We have fantastic defense industries, but we are not producing enough. We are producing in 3 months an ammunition. No, I would say Russia is producing in 3 months an ammunition, what the whole of the alliance is producing in a year. And this is simply not sustainable. We have to ramp up the defense industry production. So these issues will be on the table today in the Ministers of Defense meeting, and then afterwards also in the lunch we will have with Minister Umerov of Ukraine, where we discuss the relations between NATO and Ukraine. So thank you very much. Maybe a few questions. I can only do one question at a time. Yes.
Okay. Do you think that Secretary Hegseth's rhetoric that we heard yesterday was in any way harmful to NATO? Just the way he talked about
As I said, Secretary Hegseth, but also what later came out of Washington, clearly were big announcements. And at the same time, this is how an alliance should be governed. We are an alliance of democracies. We need to debate. And also, I see a clear convergence, as I said, that we want peace, that the peace has to be enduring, that we have to make sure that Ukraine is in the best possible position. And for the Europeans to step up in defense spending and collectively to step up the defense industrial production. So here there is a clear convergence. Sir, yes.
It's clear that things have changed here. What direction is this alliance now going?
This alliance is a family. As Pete Hegseth said yesterday and so many others, it is there for generations to come. We are there to make sure that we have the best possible deterrence in place to fight off any adversary now and in the future. But it means that we have to get to a good deal in Ukraine. We have to ramp up defense spending. We have to ramp up defense industrial production. These are clear tasks we collectively have. We will debate them. We might not always agree immediately. But as always, in the end, we come to common positions.
So you have said, your mantra has been, no decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine. Yet yesterday we saw Donald Trump having a phone call with President Putin without Ukraine. He's going to meet President Putin without Ukraine. This looks to many like the beginning of the betrayal of Ukraine.
What we have seen yesterday was the statements coming out of Washington, including, and you forget to mention that, his long phone call with President Zelensky. So we will see how this progresses from now on, step by step. Of course, it is crucial. We talk about Ukraine, that Ukraine is closely involved in everything happening about Ukraine.
Representing the U.S. Press Corps. Thanks for doing this. Do you consider President Trump's phone call with Putin the beginning of peace negotiations?
it clearly gives that impression that it was a successful phone call. We all want peace in Ukraine. Obviously, we have to make sure that Ukraine is in the best possible position. It is crucial that when a peace deal is struck, that peace deal is enduring. That Putin knows that this is the end, that he can never again try to capture a piece of Ukraine. So that has to be part of those negotiations, and no doubt that is also on the mind of President Trump and the American team. And today and the coming days and the coming week, obviously we will closely coordinate between allies. Final question, and then we'll meet again at the post-ministerial press conference. So, yes.
This is the best possible position for Ukraine. Would it be even stronger and better if things like the return of occupied territory and NATO membership would still be on the table?
Well, what I've said before, I believe we have to make sure that we concentrate on the big issues. And the one big issue, number one, is to make sure when talks start that Ukraine is in a position that Putin knows he has to come to the table. It is for him crucial to come to a deal on Ukraine, so Ukraine has to be in a strong position. And again, as I said before, it is crucial that when a deal is struck, that deal will not unravel. We have seen in 2014 what happened with Minsk. We thought that deal was there to stay. It didn't. Putin simply continued trying to grab pieces of Ukraine. And then on 2022, he started the full onslaught late February 2022. We can never, ever have that again. So I'm absolutely pro-peace. I am pro-peace talks. Absolutely, but at the same time we have to make sure that what comes out of those talks is there to stay and that Ukraine then is safe. Thank you so much. We'll meet again later today.
Thank you so much.
And originally we found you, I think, Katja, my colleague, that we bumped into at the Okay, yeah, okay, and so that's how you met. Yeah. And how did one get connected to the
it's a great morning. The United States is proud to be here, proud to be a part for a very long time of NATO and ensuring NATO remains robust and strong, maintaining deterrence on the European continent. You know, a lot of people don't know, in Afghanistan, I served under a NATO mission as a U.S. troop alongside a lot of brave NATO troops. That was a different kind of mission for NATO, far-flung after America was attacked. The war in Ukraine, the aggression by Russia, has been a factory reset for NATO, a realization that this alliance needs to be robust and strong and real. And that's why President Trump has called for increased defense spending across the board for NATO, for European countries to recognize this is an urgent, real threat to the continent. This aggression needs to be a wake-up call. Americans are an active part of this alliance, as we have been and will continue to. But when it comes to defense spending, even 2% of GDP is not enough. 3 and 4, and ultimately, as President Trump has said, 5% of defense spending is critical. A realization that there is a Russian war machine that has sought to take more and more land in Ukraine. And standing up against that is an important European responsibility. And of course, the United States has been there for a long time as well. My role as a representative of the United States is to speak realistically about the course of that conflict. And I think you saw from President Trump yesterday, who himself is the best negotiator on the planet, bringing two sides together to find a negotiated peace, which is ultimately what everyone wants. So I look forward to the ministerial today with our NATO allies to have honest conversations about where we are, but to bring peace on the continent, ensure that Europe steps forward in leadership as far as security guarantees, and that America is right alongside our allies in NATO to ensure we remain strong and that this conflict comes to an end. I'll take one question. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't your plan for Ukraine actually a betrayal of all the Ukrainian soldiers who gave their lives defending the whole of their country? And isn't it just a reward for dictators who use military strength to take what they want?
Well, that's your language, not mine. Certainly not a betrayal. As I said to our allies yesterday, we recognize the incredible commitment that has been made over many years. And no country, as the President Trump has pointed out, has made a larger commitment to the Ukrainian mission than the United States of America, north of $300 billion. So the United States has invested in stabilizing those front lines after the aggression of Russia. There is no betrayal there. There is a recognition that the whole world and the United States is invested and interested in peace, a negotiated peace. As President Trump has said, stopping the killing. And so that will require both sides recognizing things they don't want to. That's why I think the world is fortunate to have President Trump. Only he at this moment could convene the powers that be to bring peace, and that's a welcome sign. My job as the defense secretary, working alongside NATO, is to ensure that the defense capabilities of this alliance are as strong and robust as possible to deter any future aggression on the continent. That's our role, to be leaders in NATO, and that's what we'll continue to do. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning. Today we will be talking about military capabilities that we will need for our collective security, to be able to defend our peoples, our countries, our territories, also our values and our interests. We know we have to invest heavily into our security and into our capabilities. We have come a long way. We have a long way to go. This is extremely important for all of our allies to stick together here. We have very ambitious targets while we are still fulfilling our pledges that we have committed to at the Vilnius and at the Washington summits. But numbers should not be set arbitrarily. What we should be focusing on is our plans and our ambitions that determine our investments, not the other way around. So this is what we will have to work on. We know there are a lot of challenges because we need to ramp up our military industrial complex in the EU.
We need to leverage also our joint procurement, for example, via NSPA. So these are challenges we need to face, and we need to face them urgently. Ukraine needs to continuously be supported by all of us, and Luxembourg will be by Ukraine's side until the very end, and all of the allies should. We had the Ukraine Defense Contact Group meeting yesterday. Today we will have the NATO-Ukraine Council. There are talks about peace plans. Nothing about Ukraine should be decided without Ukraine at the table. Nothing about European security should be decided without Europeans at the table. Also talking about European security guarantees. This is the only way we will have sustainable peace. Thank you very much.
Borders, do you agree?
I didn't hear the question.
The US yesterday said it's unlikely Ukraine will get NATO membership. Unlikely you can return to pre-2014
well, we
borders.
committed to having relations with Ukraine also at the Washington summit, and at this point we will stick to that. Thank you.
Goedemorgen minister. Gisteravond op het telefoongesprek
Nou, uiteraard, we think it's very important that Zelensky will be at the negotiation table. As I think we all say in a united way, no discussions about Ukraine without Ukraine. The same is true for Europe, because, of course, what is negotiated also has implications for security in Europe. So we think that Europe should also sit at the table, of course, especially when there are talks about security guarantees. We need to make sure that also European countries are able to engage in these discussions.
Who will represent Europe?
We'll see. Of course, there's always a discussion within Europe who represents. Personally, you know, that's for me not the most important question. The most important question is that we make sure that there are no negotiations about European security architecture, no negotiations about security guarantees without the involvement of European countries.
How would you describe the direction that this alliance is going now?
I think what we need to do now is to make progress very soon, because we have had long discussions in the past. Now things are becoming more clear, and we need to make sure that we get to peace through strength, that we define what that strength means. We need to define what robust security guarantees mean. And we need to make sure that throughout this process that we stay united, and that we make sure that all the parties that are relevant, Ukraine, European countries, are also sitting at the table.
How optimistic are you that European allies will not be sidelined by? How optimistic are you that European allies in the end will not be sidelined in any kind of peace negotiations?
I think we need to play an important role to safeguard our own security in Europe, and we need to play a more important role in Ukraine, also to create security guarantees there. So I think there is no option to not be at the table, because we are very important in the actual implementation of those security guarantees. And I think there's also a lot that we can bring to the table. There's a lot that we can do together. And in the end, if we work together on this, we are much stronger than if we work on this individually.
Sir, considering the clear words of Secretary Hexet yesterday, do you think it would be good to have a good conversation in the alliance about its future?
Of course, we will have good conversations today. It is important that we stay united, that we project unity towards our enemies, towards our adversaries. So we need to have, I think, clear and direct discussions in those rooms behind closed doors, but then also come to an agreement and make sure that we project unity and strength to our enemies.
The Americans drew a number of red lines for Ukraine yesterday regarding the peace negotiations with Putin. Do you think that's a wise strategy if you want to be a strong actor and have a lot of leeway against Putin?
I think a lot needs to be worked out in the upcoming weeks and months, because we are talking about very serious things. When you think about security consequences, that is very serious. And I think that in that process, throughout this progress, there are so many options. We need to have a certain level of ambiguity, because we don't want to have Putin and others look in our cards that we have on the negotiation table. So I think it is important to project unity, to make sure that we speak with one voice, and also that we keep a certain level of ambiguity in the next couple of months to make sure that we do not inform Putin.
The US says NATO membership of Ukraine is unrealistic. Do you share that assessment?
I think regarding membership of Ukraine, you always need to make a distinction between the very short term and the long term. But we as Netherlands have always said that Ukraine is on the irreversible path to NATO membership, and that's still our opinion. Thank you.
Prepare for peace troops now.
Schönen guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. Seit gestern ist jetzt klar, worüber ja schon seit längerer Zeit spekuliert wurde. Nach dem Telefonat zwischen Präsident Trump und Präsident Putin soll es jetzt einen schnellen Friedensvertrag, ein schnelles Ende des Krieges geben, den Russland gegen die Ukraine seit 3 Jahren führt. Man hätte sich das auch früher gewünscht und früher vorstellen können. Offenbar gab es Gründe auf Putins Seite, nicht früher bereit zu sein, über einen solchen Frieden zu sprechen überhaupt. Und die amerikanische Administration fordert nun die Europäer auf, einen dann ausgehandelten Frieden, wann immer das sein wird und wie immer er dann konkret aussehen wird, möglichst eigenständig zu sichern. Ich will zunächst mal sagen, wenn Putin es tatsächlich ernst meint, in diese Verhandlungen reinzugehen, und daran sind zumindest nach den Erfahrungen der letzten 3 Jahre Zweifel erlaubt, dann muss er, wie ich finde, auf dem Schlachtfeld unmittelbar Taten folgen lassen und aufhören, die Ukraine zu zerstören. Klar ist für mich, und daran besteht auch kein Zweifel, Europa muss bei den Verhandlungen eingebunden sein. Und das ist, glaube ich, sehr leicht zu verstehen. Insbesondere, wenn wir, wie es gestern hieß, bei der Friedensordnung eine zentrale oder die Hauptrolle spielen sollen. Aber auch vor dem Hintergrund, dass die dann entstehende Ordnung, wenn es denn eine sein wird, und mit der Friedenssicherung, die danach kommen wird, dass wir mit diesen Folgen unmittelbar leben müssen in Europa. Also versteht es sich von selbst, dass wir Teil der Verhandlungen sein müssen. Dass die USA, und das hat mein Kollege Pete Hegseth gestern auch gesagt, ihren Fokus künftig stärker auf den Indopazifik legen würden, war klar. Das habe ich seit 2 Jahren oder 1,5 Jahren regelmäßig wiederholt. Das war völlig absehbar. Gleichzeitig, und das war auch wichtig gestern, betonten die Amerikaner gestern aber auch, sie werden zu ihrer Verantwortung stehen. Pete Hegseth sagte gestern sehr deutlich, die USA werden Europa nicht den Rücken kehren. Und er sagte wörtlich, wenn ich mich richtig erinnere, we don't go anywhere. Und das ist ein klares Bekenntnis zur NATO und zu Europa. Darauf haben wir gesetzt, und das ist gut, dass das so deutlich artikuliert worden ist. Was heißt das jetzt für uns? Wie die Verhandlungen zu einem Frieden in der Ukraine genau laufen werden und vor allem, wie die Verhandlungsergebnisse dann aussehen werden, steht natürlich jetzt noch nicht fest. Bedauerlich ist, und das sage ich auch, gehört zur Wahrheit dazu, die Trump-Administration hat gegenüber Putin schon jetzt vor Beginn von Verhandlungen öffentlich Zugeständnisse gemacht, bevor die Verhandlungen überhaupt begonnen haben. Aus meiner Sicht wäre es besser gewesen, über eine mögliche NATO-Mitgliedschaft der Ukraine oder über mögliche Gebietsverluste des Landes erst am Verhandlungstisch zu sprechen und es nicht vorher vom Tisch zu nehmen. Sollte es jetzt aber zu einem schnellen Friedensvertrag zwischen Russland und der Ukraine kommen, was ich sehr begrüßen würde, werden wir uns nicht einfach zurücklehnen können und dürfen. Das muss allen in Europa völlig klar sein. Wichtig ist, dass das Töten jetzt schnell aufhört, aber auf der Grundlage eines wirklich belastbaren, dauerhaften und fairen und gerechten Friedens. Nicht nur, weil wir dann den ausgehandelten Frieden sichern müssen, das ist klar, hinzu kommt, und das darf bei all den, wie soll ich sagen, bejubelnden Äußerungen über das Telefonat gestern nicht in Vergessenheit geraten. Putin provoziert den Westen permanent und greift uns hybride an. Es wäre naiv zu glauben, dass diese Bedrohung durch einen solchen Friedensschluss, wann immer er kommt, ich wiederhole es, tatsächlich nachlässt. Wir werden deshalb noch stärker und noch schneller in unsere Fähigkeiten zur Abwehr und Verteidigung investieren müssen. Ein Frieden, das ist leider eine Erfahrung aus den Jahrhunderten, kann man nur aus einer Position der Stärke heraus sichern. Mehr Sicherheit, und das wissen auch alle, braucht mehr Geld. Bei der Finanzierung darf es keine Denkverbote geben. Ich habe es oft gesagt und wiederhole es. Dazu gehört in Deutschland, dass wir eine Modernisierung der Schuldenbremse brauchen, die es uns ermöglicht, die langfristigen Investitionen in unsere Sicherheit zu tätigen, die nötig sind. Es gibt außerdem Länder in Europa, die schon heute Schwierigkeiten haben, die Maastricht-Kriterien zu erfüllen und das in Einklang zu bringen mit nötigen Investitionen in Verteidigung und Sicherheit. Deswegen sollten wir in Europa prüfen, ob wir die Maastricht-Kriterien auch anpassen, um Ausgaben für Verteidigung, wenn es um Ausgaben für Verteidigung geht. Die nächste Bundesregierung, die in 1,5 Wochen gewählt sein wird, wird sich sehr, sehr schnell positionieren und sich mit unseren Partnern abstimmen müssen. Wir haben keine Zeit zu verlieren. Zeit zu verlieren ist ein gutes Stichwort. Die NATO selbst wird bereits im Juni auf den Tisch legen, welcher Mitgliedstaat welche NATO-Fähigkeitsziele zu erfüllen aufbauen muss, Es tut mir leid, meine Stimme mag unklar sein, meine Gedanken sind es nicht. Mir war sehr, sehr wichtig, dass wir darüber nicht noch bis zum Herbst verhandeln, über diese NATO-Fähigkeitsziele, so wie ursprünglich angedacht. Wir dürfen die wertvolle Zeit nicht verspielen. Deshalb habe ich mich dafür eingesetzt, wie andere auch, dass wir früher Klarheit haben, also noch vor der Sommerpause im Juni werden wir wissen, über welche NATO-Fähigkeitsziele wir konkret reden. Und jetzt zeigt sich auch angesichts der neuen Entwicklung, wie richtig und notwendig es war, schneller zu werden. Vielen Dank soweit.
Dass die Europäer bei den Friedensverhandlungen involviert sein werden. Haben Sie denn diesbezüglich schon positive Signale seitens der US-Regierung bekommen, dass man auch ein Interesse hat, dass die Europäer da mit an einem Tisch sitzen?
Selbstverständlich habe ich das getan, gestern schon. Es muss klar sein, wenn wir über einen Friedensschluss, einen Waffenstillstand oder was auch immer sprechen, dass dann die Europäer, die ja wesentlicher Teil einer neuen Ordnung dann wären oder absichern müssten, was dabei herauskommt, dass wir nicht am Katzentisch sitzen können, dürfte allen einleuchten.
Herr Minister, wie soll Europa denn überhaupt den Frieden alleine sichern ohne die USA, auch weil ein Angriff auf Friedenstruppen ja möglicherweise dann nicht unter Artikel 5 fallen würde, laut USA?
Das wird eine der zentralen Fragen sein, über die zu verhandeln sein wird. Allen muss klar sein, und ich habe es Pete Hegseth gestern auch gesagt, Stand heute brauchen wir die Amerikaner als Alliierte auf dem europäischen Kontinent, als größtem NATO-Partner, um die wirksame Abschreckung gegenüber Russland auch gewährleisten zu können. Und das gilt gleichermaßen für eine Absicherung eines Friedensschlusses in der Ukraine. Deswegen kommt es darauf an, was wird tatsächlich am Ende verhandelt werden. Und gleichzeitig habe ich gestern, Pete Hegseth auch gesagt, über all das, was in den nächsten Jahren passieren wird und kann, muss man reden. Aber ein von jetzt auf den nächsten Tag herausziehen der amerikanischen Abschreckung wäre der Friedensordnung in Europa und damit der Welt nicht zuträglich. Das habe ich sehr deutlich artikuliert.
Wer sollte denn bei Friedensverhandlungen für die Europäer mit an den Tisch sitzen aus Ihrer Sicht?
Das habe ich nicht zu entscheiden. Dass wir dabei wären, ist, glaube ich, naheliegend als größte Volkswirtschaft in Europa und der drittgrößten der Welt. Aber das müssen andere entscheiden. Die neue Bundesregierung wird ins Amt kommen, wer immer dann das Sagen hat. Das wird auszuverhandeln sein. Aber klar ist, und da dürfen die Europäer sich auch nicht auseinandertreiben lassen, aus bilateralen oder Partikularinteressen heraus. Es muss an dieser Stelle klar sein, Europa muss geschlossen hier für seine Interessen und damit für die Interessen des Friedens in Europa eintreten und beteiligt sein an solchen Verhandlungen.
Was erwarten Sie von der Münchner Sicherheitskonferenz im Hinblick auf Friedensverhandlungen?
Naja, im Augenblick leben wir in Zeiten, in denen wir heute nicht sagen können, womit wir morgen rechnen. Das ist die neue Welt, in der wir leben. Ich habe vor 3 Tagen noch gesagt, ich erwarte auf der Münchner Sicherheitskonferenz keinen Friedensplan. Dessen bin ich mir heute nicht mehr sicher. Vielleicht bin ich es morgen früh wieder. Das ist leider die Situation, die wir gerade haben. Vizepräsident Vance wird morgen auf der Münchner Sicherheitskonferenz eine Rede halten. Möglicherweise erfahren wir da etwas anderes, möglicherweise auch nicht. Ich werde heute Abend hinreisen und aufmerksam zuhören und mich an den Gesprächen beteiligen.
Has President Trump reached out to Chancellor Scholz?
I don't know.
It seems Europe has been left behind in the Ukraine peace talks already. What do you think?
That's not my impression for the moment, because the reality is nobody was really involved before the phone call between Trump and Putin.
Welche Sicherheitsgarantien müssten die Europäer jetzt der Ukraine für Friedensverhandlungen geben, wenn es keine NATO-Mitgliedschaft mehr gibt? Müssen wir dann über Friedenstruppen zum Beispiel reden?
Mir ist das zu früh, darüber zu spekulieren. Es gibt verschiedene Arten, den Frieden zu sichern. Zunächst einmal muss man wissen, über welchen Frieden wir reden und wann der eintritt und wie die Bedingungen dafür sind. Ich möchte mich dazu an Spekulationen jetzt überhaupt nicht beteiligen. Okay. Vielen Dank.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bonjour. Bien, heureux de vous retrouver ici à Bruxelles pour 2 jours importants. Hier, évidemment, le format du DCG, d'autres réunions aujourd'hui bilatérales et multilatérales liées évidemment à la question de l'Ukraine, dans un fond un vrai moment de vérité politique, mais aussi sur le terrain sécuritaire et militaire pour l'ensemble des pays de la zone euro-atlantique, non pas tant d'ailleurs par la nouveauté des positions qui ont pu être développées par l'administration Trump, avec de la visibilité, y compris d'ailleurs liée aux échanges que le président Macron avait pu avoir avec le président Zelensky et le président Trump en marge de la réouverture de la cathédrale Notre-Dame de Paris. Et d'ailleurs, au fond, certaines positions étaient des positions déjà partagées par l'administration américaine sortante démocrate. La nouveauté, évidemment, est l'ouverture de ce cycle de négociations. Pour la France, les choses sont assez simples et assez claires au fond. Soit nous sommes dans des paramètres de discussion qui permettent réellement d'apporter la paix par la force, soit au contraire, ça sera la paix par la faiblesse. Et la paix par la faiblesse, malheureusement, pourra nous amener à des situations sécuritaires dramatiques, voire même à l'élargissement à terme du conflit, sans oublier évidemment l'impact déplorable que cela pourrait avoir chez d'autres compétiteurs. On ne peut pas ne pas citer Pyongyang, Téhéran et dans une autre mesure la question évidemment que pose la Chine en matière de défis. Et donc au fond, on est dans ce matin une réunion qui va poser un peu la question de l'avenir de l'Alliance. On dit que c'est l'alliance militaire la plus importante, la plus robuste de l'histoire. C'est historiquement vrai. La vraie question, c'est est-ce que dans 10 ou 15 ans, c'est toujours le cas? Et ça pose évidemment la question des dépenses, mais au fond, c'est un non-débat. Tout le monde sait qu'il faut dépenser plus. Tous les parlements, pratiquement, de l'Alliance sont en train de voter des crédits d'augmentation. Je ne vous parle même pas de la France, dont les crédits vont considérablement augmenter, doubler. Nous allons peut-être même encore aller au-delà. Mais en fait, c'est à quoi sert cet argent public? Si c'est pour gagner la guerre d'hier, si c'est pour remplir nos hangars de matériel, parfois d'ailleurs américain, pour un certain nombre de pays européens, sans pour autant chercher l'efficacité militaire réelle, ça sera un échec devant nos peuples, un échec pour le continent européen, un échec devant l'histoire. Et donc, au fond, c'est la question de l'industrie de défense, de l'économie de guerre, de la réalité du nombre de bateaux, d'avions, de troupes qui sont réellement mis à disposition de l'OTAN pour exécuter les différents plans de défense. Et puis sans oublier évidemment la question de l'innovation. Vous avez vu le temps important, unique, inédit que nous avons eu à Paris avec d'ailleurs la coprésidence indienne. Le Premier ministre Modi était à Paris pour ce sommet sur l'intelligence artificielle. Il est évident aussi qu'il faut qu'on parle davantage d'innovation ici dans cette enceinte. Des choses sont faites. Saluer le travail important qui a été fait et mené par ACT, et notamment évidemment le commandant suprême pour la transformation de l'OTAN, l'amiral Vandier. Et j'aurai l'occasion tout à l'heure d'annoncer et de confirmer qu'avec un certain nombre de pays du nord de l'Europe, nous allons nous joindre à des initiatives, notamment en matière de drones de surface en Baltique, pour là aussi être capable de répondre à la menace russe telle qu'elle se dessine devant nos yeux pour les années qui viennent. En tout cas, c'est un grand moment de vérité. Il y aura beaucoup d'engagement de Paris pour la sécurité de l'Alliance, avec aussi les positions classiques françaises d'autonomie, évidemment, et la volonté de ne pas être systématiquement aligné. Mais en tout cas, c'est le moment de la lucidité et c'est le moment de la gravité, sans faire preuve de faiblesse. Merci à toutes et à tous. Je ne prendrai pas de questions.
La place de l'Union européenne quand même dans les négociations de paix.
Merci infiniment.
Good morning. Good morning all, and welcome to this meeting of NATO defense ministers. We will focus on some key priorities for our summit in The Hague, which is only 4 months from now, I started to realize today. So it is quite soon. Defense spending will be priority number 1. To stay safe and to prevent war, we need to spend a lot more, especially in Europe and Canada. All allies stepped up defense investment in recent years, and European allies carry now a much bigger share of the burden than before. In the last 10 years, European allies and Canada have added more than $700 billion for defense. That means that in 2024, NATO allies in Europe and Canada invested almost $500 billion in defense, and that is nearly a 20% increase compared with 2023. But still, it is far from enough. We need to do much, much more. But we can do it. The proof is in what we did in 2023 going into 2024. The second priority is defense production and the need to boost the defense industry across the alliance. Yes, we do have the best industries in the world, from the US, the whole of Europe, including Turkey, the proud defense industry base in Turkey, but we must produce more, faster, and together to outpace our competitors, Russia, China, and others. Third, we will discuss Russian destabilization campaigns against our countries, including the Shadow Fleet, and how we respond. We know the Shadow Fleet is a large source of income for Russia. Baltic Sentry is a good example of how we can deter better. And then finally, when we leave this room and we go into lunch, we will discuss what more we can do to support Ukraine. Defense Minister Umerov and EU High Representative Kaja Kallas will join us. This concludes the public portion of the meeting. I want to thank the media for joining us, but please now leave the room.